Hey, haircut, what's up? And today I'm going to do another mini albums review. Yes, I'm finally back. I'm finally back from test, which ended up tragically, and I don't want to talk about it right now. Because let's focus on music and not school, okay? Anyway, today I'm going to talk about 5 albums, as usual. Let's start off by talking about the new Quavo album, Quavo Huncho. So Quavo is basically 1/3 of the crazy popular, famous Migos, the triplet trio, that's a better word, the trap rap trio that had been really viral across the USA as of recent years, alongside with Takeoff and Offset. And now Quavo debuts his solo album. Now, he had collaborated with Travis Scott to make Jack Huncho Jack, but this is his first solo debut album. And before listening to the album, I thought maybe Quavo doesn't have it in him to make an entire hour, in fact, over an entire hour long of music, of good, tolerable music. Well, the music in this album is pretty tolerable. It's not that bad. But still, this album still sounds like any Migos album ever. It's that generic. It's that predictable. And, it's good to see that Quavo is doing fine without the help of Takeoff and Offset, even though both of them are featured on this album. This album, it's boring as hell. I could easily fall asleep to this album. However, there are highlight tracks, of course. The opening track, Biggest Alley Oop, has some really tasteful beats, and the vocal samples are very haunting. And I would also like to mention Flip the Switch featuring Drake. The beat is nice, Drake's performance is cold-blooded, but it's actually not that bad. And the melody is pretty cool, even though I think I've listened to it 5 or 6 times before on different songs. And then we have let's see what else there are. I kind of like the track Bubblegum. It's probably the best of the 3 leading singles to this album. The other 2 are really boring, but Bubblegum is actually more tasteful, more lavishing. The album ending Lost is also one of my favorites on the album. It features Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi sings well. And the lyrics on this track is also kind of personal, and it's good to see Quavo diving into such territories. And I kind of like, that's pretty much, I guess, the track Go All The Way, it's kind of complicated because it's such a terrible song. It's trying to be a very, a very loud and fun, sort of wild club song, but it's so terrible, it's kind of funny, actually. And other than that, there's not much to say about this album. I guess the track Champagne Rose is pretty special as well. It features Cardi B and Madonna, and both of these features are actually not that bad, especially for Madonna. It's such a weird feature with her being this robot in the back, but I guess the beat is kind of tasteful. 21 Savage's feature on the track Pass Out is actually pretty amazing. It's aggressive, it's fast-paced, but Quavo's verse is extremely boring, and the beat itself is kinda generic and drab. The track Keep That Shit is boring, it's spacey, and the lyrics are half-assed. The track Fuck 12, the flow, it's really not that good. It's like stuttering. The flow sounds like stuttering. It's not good. The concept, the topic of the track is kind of loose, and the lyrics are kind of surface level. And Offset is featured, and his feature is meh. The track Give It To Him is also really atmospheric and spacey and absolutely boring. The track How About That is also absolutely boring, and it sounds like an interlude, but extended to a couple or 3 minutes long, I forgot. And the track Big Bro is probably the worst track here, because not only is this track painfully awkward, the lyrics of this thing is just weird as fuck. It's like Quavo is trying to give advice to this fictional kid, whoever it is, but his advices are something about Xanaxes and fentanyl. What? And people even speculated that maybe he is sort of dissing Lil Peep, but then not really, because he's in such a tone that he's sort of like warning the kid, but then not really. So I don't know what's going on with this track. It's kind of stupid. The track Shine sounds like he's just impersonating Playboy Cardi. The track Workin' Me and Lamb Talk are both very boring. While Lamb Talk, it's a tolerable track, but still boring. This album, entirely boring. The track Huncho Dreams, boring. Like, it's sort of like a response to Nicki Minaj's Barbie Dreams, and it's not really like a response, but more like an addition, an add-on. The track Lose It, boring. But instead of Quavo being boring, what's even more boring is Lil Baby. He sounds dead. And Swing sounds like some gentrified dance hall track that totally flops because it's... And overall, the album is just a boring, sleepy, run-of-the-mill, dime-a-dozen album. It's middle of the road. It's predictable. It's generic as hell. And I won't say it's terrible, but, the B word. I'm giving it a, worst is, Big Bro, and my favorite here is actually Biggest Alley Oop. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Next up, I'm actually going to talk about good albums, and I'm going to talk about Horrendous with Idol. American death metal band Horrendous, not so famous, but good music. So Idol, here we go. It's their 4th album, I think, and wow. So I wasn't a huge fan of death metal before, I guess, 2018, but after 2017, I really wanted to dive more into rock music. I started to listen to Death and Cannibal Corpse a little bit, a tad bit, and I tried so hard to get into death metal, which is a genre of music that I thought I would hate when I was at the age of 7 or 8, when I was listening to bands like Maroon 5 and Imagine Dragons. But now, Horrendous Idol. And this album's really good. The album starts off with this ominous, mysterious, strange, scary guitar intro that I actually really love. It's called Prescience, Prescience, right? And then the first chord track is Soothsayer, which is an absolute banger. Absolute banger. That's going to be the thumbnail, by the way. Me getting excited over this track. Because it's just so fun and thrilling and wild. It's technical death metal, but not in a very sanitized, squeaky clean way. It really has a raw, organic, and wild flavor to it. It's pure mayhem and chaos as well. But yet, it's not actually absolute chaos. There's a method to the madness. And the bass riff, it's animalistic and it's climbing onto the walls and shit. The drums are bombastic and the melodies are actually quite sticky. And there's a lot of tension building and releasing throughout the track, and it is also multi-phased, and I love that. The vocals are great as well. I mean, they're growls, but they sound like angry wolves howling, and it just gives the album such an oomph to it, such a texture to it. And I guess all these crazy, amazing, raw, visceral instrumentals also apply to the rest of the tracks. The second core track, the Idolater, have a mysterious, strange intro, but then later we get to these guitar arpeggios that are aggressive, but what's even more aggressive is the main bass riff. And the background vocals are pretty whack as well, and it's amazing. The track Golgothan Tongues is some crazy time signature play that's really awesome. The guitar riffs are monstrous. The track Divine Anhedonia is, while it's not as great and powerful as the other tracks on this album, I still think it's solid, and I kind of like the strange spoken word thing that they added into the track. And we also have Devotion, Blood for Ink. Fun fact, it's one of the singles, and when they upload it to Spotify, there's a typo. So it's Bluff for Ink in Spotify, and it's really rare to see a typo on Spotify. But anyway, the riff on this thing is badass, and it's just this crazy, speedy beast metal track, man. And the album ends off with Obolus, and it's this 8-minute long, multifaceted monster, and it's very colorful, and it's such a theatrical ending to the album. And overall, I don't really have much to complain about this album, other than it's one of my favorite metal albums of the year. I'm enjoying it a lot. My favorite here, Soothsayer. Oh man, Soothsayer. I was just listening to this track when I was going to school, and I'm like, oh. And my least favorite is, I don't know, Threnody. Even though it's more like an interlude, I'm kind of feeling a 9 out of 10. Good album. And then, speaking of guitars and rock music, I want to talk about the new Polyphia album, New Levels, New Devils. Polyphia is an instrumental math rock band, and on this album, the music sounds like modern EDM music, except they are way more intricate and with some crazy, amazing guitar skills. And the production of this album is pretty amazing and brilliant as well, because it's high definition. It's real high definition. The drums are crystal clear, the guitars are crisp, and wow. The album starts off with Nasty, which leaves a strong impression on me, because it's essentially my first track on the album, but, you know. Anyway, it starts off with some hypnotic, angular guitar melodies, and then it goes into the core part of the track, and it just explodes into this dizzying, aggressive, exciting guitar jam session that's really, really satisfying to listen to. The second track, Odie, is equally as fun and wild, and it sort of has this Latin flavor to it, which is really nice, and it's very lavishing, very colorful, and fun. I also like the track Yas, and it sort of has this R&B vibe to it that's really strong and really heavy, and the way it's executed, it's really sweet. And I also really like how summery the track feels, and the vocal sample is not that bad as well. Saucy is also a pretty amazing track with the nimble and sassy guitars. The chords are pretty sweet, and there's something jazzy and groovy and glitchy about this track that makes it stand out. The track Death Note is a special track because the intro is kind of reverby, and it's more dramatic, it sounds more theatrical, and the music itself sounds kind of anime styled, because Death Note, And we also have the track Drown, which is the most mellow and beautiful track on the track listing, and it's way more slower, but then it's also kind of backed with the trap percussions, so it sounds special. And it's also very spacey and atmospheric, and I like it. I also like the track Rich Kids. It's pretty lavishing because Rich Kids, and the album ending, G.O.A.T, G-O-A-T, it really has the EDM vibe that I have mentioned earlier, and it's because of the electronic effects. And I think while I don't enjoy most of the EDM in the world right now, but I think this track is particularly good because the guitars here are amazingly arranged and it's just so on time and spot on. And the other tracks are bad. I mean, the track is literally titled Bad and So Strange. The other tracks are bad and so strange. And the track Bad is not that bad. It's slower and heavier, but still is milder. And the track So Strange is probably the mildest track here, and the vocal samples are sort of overshadowing the guitars a little bit too much on the track. So I don't know about that, but still, I love how exciting and wild and fun this album is, and the guitar skills. Man. My favorite track? Damn, I never thought about it. Nasty. Oh my gosh. I realized that all my favorite tracks so far are basically the first track, or more like the first core track, and the worst, I guess, is So Strange, and the worst is So Strange. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Then we will continue on our rock music reviews with Greta Van Fleet's new album, Anthem of the Peaceful Army, I think that's called. Yeah, Greta Van Fleet. I have to talk about this band. I have to talk about this album. Pitchfork infamously gave this album a 1.6, and it pissed off a lot of people, of music people worldwide. And while I don't like this album, I think the way Pitchfork criticized Greta Van Fleet is a little too harsh, but I also have my reasons for disliking their new album. And Greta Van Fleet is actually a really special band because the production on their music is actually really tasteful and it's really well done. They have great musicianship. Their performances are passionate. The vocals are actually really good. The guitars are really, really good as well. But contextually speaking, they are essentially a hard rock band with the blues-infused guitar riffs that are more primal, and their the vocalist's vocals are the vocalist's vocals. It's sort of, yeah. I'm just gonna get straight to the point. It sounds like none other than Led Zeppelin. And yes, maybe they sound a little bit like Aerosmith, maybe they sound a little bit like Rush, but you can boil their sound down to one single band, and that's Led Zeppelin. And they don't just sound like Led Zeppelin. They're literally doing a super spot on impersonation on Led Zeppelin. It's really impressive. And the vocals, they are literally the same vocals as Robert Plant's. It's sung by a different person, but the vocalist of this band somehow sound like Robert Plant on every single note. And the resemblance is uncanny. And, you know, if you mix songs of this album up with Led Zeppelin songs, I wouldn't tell. I couldn't tell. I would not be able to tell which is which, because the impersonation is just so spot on. And I mean, yeah, Greta Van Fleet is obviously ripping off Led Zeppelin, but not like Led Zeppelin had never ripped off other bands' material, right? Well, yeah, even though Led Zeppelin has stolen a lot of songs At least they gave those songs their own twist. But Greta Van Fleet, nope, it's just Led Zeppelin all the way. And yes, I also do understand that there are way worse bands to sound like than Led Zeppelin. But let's be honest here. Greta Van Fleet isn't even as good as Led Zeppelin. They can never come out with legendary songs like Black Dog, Stairway to Heaven, when the levee breaks, I'm just Good Times, Bad Times, Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You, Dazed and Confused, Communication Breakdown, the list goes on. So yeah, Greta Van Fleet is like a cover band, but without the covers, in the words of the great Tofu Tony. But I think the biggest problem of this album is that it's a big no to musical evolution. It's because of musical evolution, we have so many different types and genres of new music that's innovative and cutting edge, and that's constantly evolving. And that's also one of the reasons why listening to music and exploring music are so exciting and intriguing, because it's always evolving, it's always changing, it's always coming up with new genres and new styles. And so this album, and aside from that, I guess the guitar riffs on the album closer hits pretty hard, but the second last track, Anthem, it's painfully awkward because they're trying to sound like Led Zeppelin, but they're making a slow ballad, so it's painfully awkward. But whatever. This band, this album, is not the album. Not the album. I'm not even gonna care which tracks are good on here or which tracks are bad. I'm just kind of feeling a 4 out of 10. And at the end, I'm gonna talk about the new Thom Yorke soundtrack for Suspiria. And the title for the album is Suspiria, parenthesis, music for the Luca Guadagnino film, close bracket. So, yeah, Thom Yorke makes his debut on movie scores, and that's really exciting because, if you don't know who Thom Yorke is, why wouldn't you know? But Thom Yorke, the musical legend that I adore, he is the frontman of basically my favorite band ever, Radiohead, and his colleague, his co-bandmate, his bandmate, Johnny Greenwood, had been making a lot of movie scores for Paul Thomas Anderson, the director, for movies like There Will Be Blood or Inherent Vice. And now Thom Yorke makes his debut, and I am super excited because Johnny Greenwood takes such a traditional and orchestral approach, because Johnny Greenwood is a musical genius, but Thom Yorke, he is more of an odd, experimental, weird person, and his music tend to be more cold-blooded and more electronic-oriented. So him making music, making the film score for a horror film, and not just any horror film, but a remake or a cover version, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting. And to be honest, I think Thom Yorke nailed it. I don't think it's the greatest movie score of all time, but still, Thom Yorke nailed it. Let's start off with the leading singles. First of all, Suspirium, which is the lead ballad of the entire movie. It's such a haunting and beautiful piano ballad, and it's sort of this calm after the storm track that really works well, and it's so beautiful. What can I say? We have the track Has Ended, which has a strangely modern vibe to it. It kind of feels out of place, to be honest, and it's really spacey and it sounds like some of the Thom Yorke solo material. I'm kind of on the fence with this track. But then we have the track Open Again, which has some really sorrowful skipping guitars, and we also get Thom Yorke's cold-blooded but beautiful vocals. I love Open Again. And the track Unmade is also a highlight. It's very beautiful. It's very transcendent and entrancing. We get these pianos and the backup choir vocals, and they're both beautiful and absolutely powerful. It's like True Love Waits, but more theatrical and more dramatic. And of course, we have the main theme, Volk. I love Volk. I mean, damn, it's so unsettling. It's so ominous. Like, something strange is happening, but you don't know what. So this track really brings the ambiguous vibe that I so desperately need from a film score of a horror movie. And still, it's somewhat groovy and sticky. And I also like how, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think Thom Yorke sampled some train honks, because I don't know, but from what I've listened on this track, they sound like train honks. Yeah, pretty amazing. And let's talk about other tracks on the record as well. The Conjuring of Anti is a standout track with the downtrodden dark pianos and the angelic choir that's backing it up. Pretty strange, but amazing. And the track A Sad Hand Across Your Face is also a standout track. And speaking of choir, we also have the track A Choir of One, which is this giant, monstrous, 14-minute long ambient choir track. That's such a risky move by Thom Yorke, because it's just so experimental. Yeah, it's even longer than twice the length of Paranoid Android, and probably even longer than twice the duration of Super Collider or something. The scariest track here is Voiceless Terror. It's very horrifying, and the noises, they're screeching, they're screaming. It's so unsettling. And we also have the track Synthesizer Speaks, which is actually a pretty special track because it has this really strange noise and it lasts for a couple seconds, and it's well produced. And I don't think it's in the background, it's a background music. I don't think it acts as background music. I think it's more like a noise, a part of the plot. And A Storm That Took Everything is a great opener as well. It's very dizzying, and it feels like drowning to the bottom of not necessarily the ocean, but some sort of place. And the track Belongings Thrown into a River is also really tense and dark. And overall, I'm really impressed with what Thom Yorke had done on Suspiria. And Thom Yorke, amazing guy. I'm kind of feeling an 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's an 8 out of 10, but I'm probably not gonna put it in the top 50 albums of the year list, because it's not exactly a studio album, but more like a film score. But still, loving it. So have you listened to these albums from 1 to 10? How much do you rate them? Like if you like them, hate if you hate them, and subscribe if you want more. And I will be reviewing Arcade Fire's entire discography, and Liliati and Daughters, and Rosalia on the next video. And oh my gosh, Joji, duh. I'll be reviewing Muse, Anderson .Paak, Oxnard. Looking forward to that album. Of course, Kanye West's Yandhi also coming towards the end of November. I'll also be reviewing that Poppy album. I'll be reviewing Julia Holter, and I'll probably give Mick Jenkins' new album a go. And yeah.